to inform me that is carrying out an investigation into the performance of the board of its functions, particularly in relation to public procurement, usage and disposal of assets and proprietary matters in relation to the 2015 accounts. Professor Richard Thorne has been appointed to carry out the investigation. It is envisaged that this will be completed in Q1 2018. The accounts before us today are for 2014, not 2015. That said, with care must be taken by witnesses and members of the committee to say or nothing that might compromise the already mentioned investigation. I would ask that members do not say anything that might prejudice the outcome of any investigation. So I'll be looking for your cooperation on this. And I want to, just before we start, I want to remind witnesses, it's my third time to say this today because we have a different group of witnesses, and everybody in the public gallery to turn off their mobile phones. I want to advise the witnesses directly that by virtue of 1721 of the Defamation Act 2009, witnesses are protected by absolute privilege in respect to their evidence to the committee. If you're directed by the committee to cease giving evidence in relation to a particular matter and you continue to do so, you're entitled thereafter only to qualified privilege in respect of your evidence. You're directed that only evidence connected with the subject matter of these proceedings is to be given, and you're asked to respect the parliamentary practice to the effect that where possible, you should not criticise or make charges against any person or persons or entity by name in such a way as to make him, her or it identifiable. I also want to welcome most of you, I'm saying practically most cases from the ETBs, it's your first time at the Public Accounts Committee, and I know it's a new experience and we want to be conscious and thank you for being here. And just before I ask for the opening statement, and the Comptroller and Auditor General, I forgot to ask you to give a brief opening comment in relation to the two previous ETBs, but we've that dealt with now, so just a brief opening comment in relation to the two organisations here now.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I think any points that I was going to make in relation to the two previous ETBs were covered in the opening statements anyway by the Chief Executives. The 2015 financial statements of Tipperary ETB are being examined today. Tipperary ETB is an amalgamation of the former VECs in Tipperary North and South ridings. In 2015, the ETB had receipts of €42 million, matching payments of €42 million. Just under €31 million was received from the department and €8 million from Solace. The audit opinion in respect of the financial statements was unqualified. I might mention here that the Tipperary ETB financial statements for 2016 have been signed by the board and are currently being checked by my office, and indeed they may be awaiting me when I return from the meeting today. And I expect to have the file ready for sign-off in the coming days. The accounts of Kildare and Wicklow ETB before the committee today are the first accounts of the ETB relating to the 18-month period July 2013 to December 2014. In that period, the ETB had receipts of just over €151 million, payments of almost €154 million, and an overall deficit of around €2.3 million. Just over €112 million was received from the department, and over €17 million was received from Solace. Draft 2015 financial statements were received from the ETB on the 12th of December 2016, and the audit commenced in January 2017. A number of issues arose during the audit, which resulted in a formal audit query being issued to the Chief Executive. Following receipt of his response, the audit team at my direction raised matters of concern with the chairperson of the board of the ETB and with the department. Subsequent to their own further inquiries, the Minister for Education and Skills appointed a statutory investigator in October 2017. And as you've said, Chairman, that investigation is ongoing. In the circumstances of the investigation being ongoing, I am not in a position currently to complete that audit. And we will, of course, move to complete the audit as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Comptroller and Auditor General. And I'm now going to ask Fionnuala McGeever to make the opening statement on behalf of Tipperary ETB, followed by Sean Ashe to make the opening statement on behalf of Kildare and Wicklow ETB. Ms McGeever.
Thank you, Chair. Tipperary Education and Training Board was established on the 1st of July 2013 as a result of the amalgamation of North and South Tipperary VECs. Tipperary Education Board currently manages 11 second schools and 1 special school. That's St Joseph's Ferry House Detention Centre. In addition, we operate an extensive further education and training programmes, and we have youth officers in both North and South Tipperary supporting the development of youth services. In total, Tipperary Education and Training Board manages 30 buildings, including schools, further education and training centres and administrative offices. The two offices are their headquarters in Nina and the designated sub-office in Clonmel as a result of a ministerial decision which we implement. The distance between the two offices is 90 kilometres, 180 kilometres round trip. There is no administrative office in Thurles. In 2016, Tipperary ETB managed a budget of 50.6 million. The main elements of this budget were schools and administration, 32 million, further education and training, 13.7 million, youth services, 0.6 million, capital funding, 1.8 million, other programmes, 2.5, a total of 50.6 million. By far the largest element of our expenditure is staff pay costs. For the last full financial year, 2016, these costs were almost 35 million. The full year expenditure in 2017 will be approximately 55 million. The geographic and economic context. County Tipperary has a population of just under 160,000. It is the sixth largest county in the country. It is the largest inland county in Ireland. Population growth in recent years has been modest and below the national average. Traditionally, North Tipperary has been aligned with the Midwest region and South Tipperary with the South East. This requires participation in regional boards in both areas by the ETB. Estimated unemployment currently stands at approximately 9.3% against a national average of 7.5%. The main developments, a snapshot of some of the main developments since our amalgamation. A number of significant milestones have been achieved since the amalgamation in 2013. These are detailed below. Some of the highlights are the transfer of training services for the county from both Waterford Wexford ETB and Limerick Cllr ETB in March 2016. Opening of the new 12 million PPP school at Cummer College, Carrick-on-Suir. Opening of the new 1 million extension to Borrisokane Community College in recent weeks. In each year, the financial statements have been signed by the CNAG within the following 12 months. Unqualified CNAG audit reports have issued since amalgamation. Successful amalgamation of the two former VECs, including the merge of the financial database and the establishment of the network connectivity between the two offices. Implementation of a robust risk management process, including focused staff training. Our services and staffing. During the 2016, Tipperary ETB employed 1,200 staff. This includes a full-time staff and part-time staff, tutors and special needs assistants, caretakers, cleaners and admin staff. In 2017, Tipperary ETB is currently providing education services across the county as follows. At second level, 4,708 students. Further education, 9,809, and that will more than likely just go over the 10,000 by Christmas. Training, 662. Part-time and night classes, 583. Our 90 PLC courses are delivered at 8 locations at level 5 and 6. Enrolment in schools and PLC courses in 2017 have increased by 4.6% on the 2016 figures. The main achievements during the period for the amalgamation, since the amalgamation, has been to maintain continuity, uphold the standards of corporate governance and minimise risk of failures. Our annual financial statements. For each of the 3 years' accounts produced by Tipperary ETB, the relevant dates of the production of the accounts are as follows. For the 18-month 31st of the 12th, 2014, the draft accounts were submitted to CNAG on the 19th of the 9th of 15, and the final sign-off was the 31st of the 12th, 2015. For the year 31st of the 12th, 15, the draft accounts to CNAG 23rd of the 9th, 16, and the final sign-off is the 16th of the 12th, 2016. And as already stated, our 2016 accounts will be signed off in the next day or so, possibly this evening. At the end of 2016, the two databases for the former VECs were merged following the completion of the government network connectivity between the two offices. The 2016 accounts were the first set to be produced from the amalgamated database. Since 2013, priority has been given to producing the V15 in a timely manner as possible. In each year, Tipperary ETB has had its statement signed by its CNAG within the following year. In common with other ETBs that use the Manzer ESI system, production of the V15 is largely a manual exercise using Excel spreadsheets. The board and the Finance and Audit Committees are continually updated on the expenditure throughout the year. 2017 will be the first set of accounts to be produced from a full year of operating the amalgamated database. We believe that this will lead to a significant improvement in the timeliness of finalising the V15 for 2017. In our finance area, the financial reporting is now managed centrally from the NENA office by the Finance APO. All CNAG audit reports have been unqualified. The merge of the main financial databases were completed in 2016. The introduction of Wait to Pay allows students and parents to make online payments for books, contributions, tours, etc., thus reducing the amount of cash managed by schools. Assumed responsibility for the training services, including new systems such as SAP, new payment and accounting processes. An automated system, DCS, is in place for part-time staff to submit their timesheets for payment. This is currently being rolled out to additional centres across the county. A portal is currently being tested that will allow staff travel claims to be submitted automatically and for staff P6s to be distributed electronically. Currently, the payroll function is being centralised in Clonmel, and all other payment processes, creditors, travel, trainee payments, are being centralised in NENA in preparation for the move to shared services. Solace introduced the funding allocation request and reporting system, and Tipperary ETB has introduced the FAR web application. Under human resources, staff recruitment is managed from one office, NENA, and the volume of recruitment has ramped up significantly, particularly in the further education training area. 200 positions were advertised in 2017. Staff leave is managed and recorded from one office, and that is the Clonmel office. Contract conversion for BTI staff currently is in progress, and that's a national initiative, and we're part of that. CPD policies are in place, encouraging all staff to upskill to meet the changing needs of Tipperary Education Training Board. Arrangements are in place for part-time staff to join the superannuation scheme, and staff training on the single public service pension scheme is ongoing. Under corporate services, including capital, procurement and ICT, additional work in the corporate services are FOI, data protection, etc. And these have been taken on and managed centrally from the NENA office. All statutory committees are in place, working effectively, and are also managed from the NENA office. Tipperary Education and Training Boards are complying with the FOI reporting requirements, and this is published on our website. A comprehensive risk management process is now in place with a regular review of risk registers. Comprehensive training for boards of management and board members has been completed. Tipperary ETB has worked with the ETBI to upgrade its website utilising the common design template, and that has all gone live only since last week. School websites are currently being upgraded, with new sites going live November 2017. Office 365 and related cloud-based services are being introduced in schools and further education training centres. Encryption of mobile devices to improve security and comply with data protection is in progress. A number of significant procurement processes have been completed across the ETB, including print services, canteen provision, contracted cleaning, school books and all ICT hardware requirements. The capital programme includes a combination of major and minor capital works, including the provision of new ASD facilities, school extensions and various upgrading and repair works. Capital expenditure in 2016 was 1.8 million. The VSware administration platform has been introduced to our schools. Under further education and training, the revised policy, direction and funding model for our FET resulting from the establishment of Solace has been embraced by Tipperary ETB. These changes have altered the structure of governance, strategy, focus and funding of the FET provision. The integration of FET as a result of the establishment of Tipperary ETB has resulted in improved services right across the board to learners, the removal of duplication of programme provision and an extension of the available course provision. Following the establishment of SOLAS, Tipperary ETB has fully implemented the additional reporting and other requirements, including strategic planning, progress review, monitoring of outcomes, the FAR reporting requirements, the adaptation of the PLSS database and the revised QQI processes. A significant event in the history of Tipperary ETB was the transfer of training function in March 2016. Previously, training services provided in Tipperary had been managed from either Waterford or Limerick. With the transfer of training, there has been an expansion in the volume of courses provided. Additional staff have been hired to manage the service, and in 2017, Tipperary ETB received sanction from SOLAS to operate national apprenticeship courses for the first time. These courses will start in early 2018 and will be based in a new training centre in Thurles. I've given a breakdown of all our training programmes and numbers. The total number is 10,101, and these programmes include services for refugees and asylum seekers. And Chair, I won't go down through each of those numbers. Under our heading of youth services, highlights of the current provision include 2 new sample projects in Cahir, Feathers and Killinall, and they were established in the 2016-2017 year with the funding of 261,000 from DCYA, and they're 2 projects of a national significance because it will be the way forward in terms of how funding is given through youth services. Local youth work equipment grants of 170k were allocated to 35 youth groups. Local youth grant scheme of 45,000 was allocated to 35 youth club grants as well. Student Leaders Congress. This was the first of its kind in the whole country, and that was just held recently in Ena College. And that was the representation of all our student leaders in all our schools, where we would listen to their student voice. And I stress that that was the first of its kind in the entire country. In articulating the progress that has been made in Tipperary ETB, as outlined above, it is important to note that the staff employed in Tipperary ETB have tirelessly shown their commitment, dedication, adaptability, innovation and perseverance in moving through the most momentous and unprecedented period of change in the education and training sector that has ever been. Our focus in the immediate future will be the ongoing improvements in our service delivery, including the introduction of ICT services, managing the impact of the shared services on our staff and services, the introduction of new apprenticeships, managing growth in our schools, and expanding the scope of services delivered under further education and training. Gurmil Mahagat.
And we'll ask Sean Ashe to make the opening statement on behalf of Kildare and Wicklow Education Training Board.
Thank you, Chair, for inviting us here today and giving us the opportunity to make this opening statement. KWETB, the former Wicklow VEC and Kildare VEC, were incorporated into that entity. Due to the size and geography of the entity, KWETB was established by ministerial order with a main office in Naas and a sub-office in Wicklow town, approximately 85 kilometres apart. Following extensive discussions with administrative staff and others, we decided to locate the finance function in Wicklow town, corporate services, human resource functions in Naas in an effort to bring cohesion and efficiency to our operations. KWETB manages a region that is part of the commuter belt outside the M50, which has experienced significant demographic change over the past 5 years and continues to expand exponentially. This generates significant workload and challenges for management. Some key metrics on KWETB. Our service plan is at 138 million, with 30 million for further education and training in that, which is an increase of 39% since we amalgamated. We have projected capital budget between now and into 2018 of between 50 and 70 million. Our staff head count is currently in excess of 2,500 teachers and administrators. That's the total on the P60, P35. We have 13,000, in excess of 13,000 main scheme students, which is an increase of 15% since we amalgamated. Our further education and training beneficiaries are at 16,251, which is an increase of 29% since we amalgamated. And our QQI awards issued since amalgamation is 27,809. We have 21 post-primary schools. We have one large standalone PLC college with over 1,100 pupils. And we have 6 community schools under our remit. And recently we've been engaged with the development of 2 community national schools which are expanding rapidly and are at 400 pupils. We have 7 youth reach centres, we have 7 VTOS centres, we now have 2 youth officers, we have 1 apprenticeship centre, we have 10 adult basic education centre. And I'm very proud to say that we piloted an innovative refugee education centre in Kildare town, which became the model to be used elsewhere in the country. And I just would like to thank the staff initially who set up that project for their dedication and commitment to supporting the Syrian population in Kildare town. We have 1 outdoor education centre. We have 2 trainee centres. One is in Newbridge, the Community Training Workshop, but we also have Race and the Farrier School in Kildare town. We're one of the largest groups of school completion programmes under our remit. We have 8 in total. We have 2 prison education centres. We operate out of Shelton Abbey and we operate out of the Midlands Prison in Portlaoise. We now have a music generation project which is expanding, sports promotion unit, music education centre in Bray, adult guidance services we have 5. So we're operating across the entity out of 79 locations, which is a fairly challenging task, but nevertheless, as my previous colleague said, our function is to get out there into the communities and deliver services at local level. We also, in addition, have 23,000 what's known as cooperation hours, where we provide local institutions with teaching support services. So if you look at the chart, I'll just take the highlights out of it. Our comparative stats for between 13 and 16. Our operational budget, as I said, is up 39%. Staff pay budget is up 5%. The whole-time staff equivalent is up 21%. Post-primary students up 15.5%. Post-primary community national schools up 14.2%. Our FET students up 28.9%, and our capital project spend up 90%. KWETB is delivering large capital projects, land purchase and project management in conjunction with the Department of Education and Skills and other patron bodies. This is in accordance with the expanded responsibilities under the Education and Training Boards Act 2013. We are currently delivering on the following major capital projects: Naas Community National School, I should read Naas Community College, mistype. That's an 18 million project, is at stage 2B, and I hope to have the stage 2B report in the department next week. Maynooth Community College and Maynooth Post-Primary School are in one campus now in Maynooth, and that project is a 30 million plus project. It's the largest second level project ever in the state, undertaken in the state, and I'm proud to state that that project is progressing at a rapid rate, and hopefully we will have buildings by September 18. We have Greystones Community National School going into the RAPID programme, and we have St Conleth's in Newbridge currently under construction, and we have a PPP project coming out of Raheen in Bray. That is due to hand over, I understand, at the end of the month. In addition, the ETB has progressed 8 major capital projects into the 2018 capital building programme. That was a major challenge in itself, and what it means is that the bulk of the schools in our ETB either have new buildings or will experience new extensions. KWETB is also providing and managing new start-up schools and extensions to existing schools for other patron bodies, including Educate Together, An Forest Tratunica, the Church of Ireland and the Diocese of Kildare and Wicklow, a total of 9 major capital projects. Those projects are located in Wicklow Town, Bray, Naas 3, Kildare Town 2, Temple Rainey in Arklow and Athy. That's a significant workload, but we undertook it, and I think there's value for money in the way we approached it, in that we are using existing stock of buildings to enable the department to start up these projects in these locations at no cost to the Exchequer. The other thing to note about the entity, when it was formed, there was no training centre in KWETB. So when the training function transferred from FÁS, we were challenged as to how we would deliver training facilities across the entity. I would highlight there in my report, or my opening statement, 3. In Marine House is in Wicklow Town. We have now developed a hospitality training centre of excellence, and that will deliver the skill sets that are needed and currently in high demand from the hospitality industry. There's a major deficit there, and I think this building and the staff that we've put in there will meet the needs in our entity. I was over there yesterday, and I was delighted to see that we have a group of Italian trainers teaching Irish people who are unemployed how to make pizzas. And when I asked one question, well, what's the cost of the oven? €30,000 supplied from Italy for this project, which is going to roll out a new line of pizza product across the state. So I'm delighted to say that with the initiative of our head of training and our head of FET, we got that project into Wicklow Town. We also, in conjunction with Intel and FIT, Fast Track into Technology, developed a new mechatronics course in Selbridge. And the significance of that project is that all the trainees from the first cohort were employed directly by Intel, and they've come back to us to train another cohort, and they've asked us to expand that programme into pneumatics, and we're currently working on that. And they are innovative new courses. Solus has asked us to develop a centre of excellence to train electricians, apprentice electricians, and we're dealing with that. So from an organisation or an entity that has had no training centre, what we're trying to do, and it's the board's policy, is deliver locally and regionally. And I think that policy is working. And I'd like to thank the board for supporting it. We have noted the following challenges. The lack of authority to recruit staff for 8 years and the consequential lack of expertise. And I would put in there, because of the rate of expansion that we've experienced, the shortfall in providing teaching staff is also caught in that statement. We have a high level of increase in responsibility, as I said, with no increase in staff. The activity, I think I've outlined it there, I won't go into the detail, Chairman, but it is quite significant. KWETB is a strong organisation in continuous high growth, with student numbers increasing per annum at a rate of 5%. I think a key management risk that's identified is the lack of an effective financial information technology system. I know the Department of Education, through the PMO office, is working on that, and I was privileged to chair the payroll shared services committee and still chair it. Our plans for delivery of accounts, and particularly of the concern of this committee of delivery of the accounts on time. We're working closely with the CNAG and the ETBI finance forums, and will continue to do so over the coming months to ensure on-time delivery of accounts. On reviewing the CNAG report to this committee, I note, this was the November 16 report, that the KWETB, we submitted our 14 accounts. I think we're the second ETB to do so in that period. But one thing that puzzled me was the length of time it took for the accounts to be processed. And I'm only assuming it was because we were also piloting new formats of the accounts for the department, and we were also piloting the merger of our software systems, our financial systems, our payroll systems, and our creditor systems on behalf of 9 other ETBs. We were the pilot scheme. I would like to thank the staff involved in that, because it proved to be a very successful project, and now we have an integrated system across those 9 ETBs using what's known as the ESI or the Mansor system. So I would hope, and I'm confident, that draft financial accounts can be produced within the time span stipulated by statute going forward. And every effort has been made in-house to ensure that will be the case. And I am confident that next year's set of accounts will be delivered in a timely manner. KWETB is a dynamic and vibrant organisation, prepared to engage and manage the challenges it faces. It is fortunate that its key operational staff will go the extra mile, continually upskill, and is committed to the delivery of excellent customer service and corporate governance. KWETB has operated within its sanctioned budgets and made the adjustments to its expenditure necessary to remain as far as possible within budget, but more importantly, even though we had sanctions from the department and from our own board for borrowings, we have not borrowed since 2012. The other thing I would note, and I know the focus is on channels of funding, but we also receive funding from DCYA, we also receive funding from the Department of Health, from PUBL, and from EU sources. So we have a significant range of bodies funding the entity, all with the different accounting requirements that we have to deal with. And the other thing that I would say, Chairman, is we are educationists, and our primary focus is on the delivery of a first-class education system to our learners. That's my primary focus, and that we must keep them in our sight at all times. And we must give the leadership to ensure that we deliver a world-class education service to our students. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Ashe. And members have indicated in the following sequence: Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald, David Cullinan, Alan Kelly, Catherine Connolly, Catherine Murphy and Bobby Aylward. Deputy MacDonald. We've said 15 minutes and 10 minutes after that, because there's quite a few here. So, yeah.
You're welcome from Chepman, from Wicklow and Kildare. Mr. Ashe, is this your first time before the PAC?
No, I was here in
2012.
2010 or 12? 12, yes.
I remember you.
Thank you.
And on that occasion, if you recall, you were with Kildare VEC at that time, weren't you, Mr. Ashe?
Yes.
And at that time, we heard the sorry saga of €189,000 worth of computers and support services bought from a former employee. Failings in Kildare VAC's handling of a 23 million school building development, and consequent through the whole saga, the department had to bail you out to the tune of €20 million. Issues raised in relation to land and property school development, with €139,150 paid to an auctioneer in 2008 without a competitive tender. A company hired to work on a small scheme in 2004, kept on as a project manager for the larger development. Between the jigs and the reels, the firm earned €830,000 between 2005 and 2011 without the work being tendered for. Now, I know, Mr. Ashe, that your position was, and presumably remains, that the department had sight of all of this and was informed, and that you acted
correct,
impeccably.
I acted in accordance with the proposals that we put to the department, the plans we put to the department. the plans that were adopted by the department.
Okay.
And
so that remains your position. Thank you for clarifying that.
They were further clarified.
And Mr. Ashe, the year later, then the amalgamation happens, and you're appointed as chief executive to this new Kildare Wicklow ETB.
Yes.
We had a conversation earlier on with the department, and we teased out the fact that there were 20 people who qualified, but only 16 positions.
Yes.
So you were one of the 16 chosen.
Right, yes.
for your appointment. Who interviewed you for the post, or how did you?
I was interviewed by the PAS.
The who?
For the Public Appointment Service for the original appointment.
We don't have anyone from that service, presumably, here. Tell me, in the course of, without breaking any confidences, in the course of that exchange or interview, did they explore with you the matters that I've alluded to in 2012?
My original appointment came through the PAS system.
Pardon me?
My original appointment as Chief Executive, yes.
To Kildare VC?
Yes. There was a process then devised by the department through the IR channels and with the support of the Labour Court, as it was at the time, to develop a process for redeployment.
Okay, thank you. So you didn't come into your current position through the Public Appointment Service?
No.
Rather, you came through this redeployment channel.
That's right,
so
yes.
Who from the department spoke to you, Mr. Ashe, or
Sorry?
who spoke to you about your current position, or how was the happy news delivered to you?
There was a process. It wasn't done like that. It was an actual formal process.
Okay, and in the course of that formal process, then,
yes.
were these matters that I have recited for you and that we dealt with here before in the Public Accounts Committee from 2012, were those matters raised with you?
No.
No?
No. I said the process was a standalone process that applied to the sector.
So, okay, so was there any account taken for past performance or suitability? After all, there were 20 people in 16 posts, and I'm just struck by the fact that clearly you were deemed on merit
yes.
to be one of the 16.
Well, the process, it was devised, as I said, and that was the process that was rolled out across the 16 entities.
Can the department cast any light on this? Just to be cut to the chase here, I want to know how it is that in 2012 Mr. Ashe appears before the Public Accounts Committee with a series of peculiarities and concerns raised by the then Comptroller and Auditor General, Mr. Buckley, you may recall. It's prior to Mr. McCarthy's time. And I have to say, we were very alarmed by all of this carry-on, the lack of adherence to proper procurement and so on, and tendering, proper tendering processes. So that's 2012. You made your defence at committee. Let me acknowledge that at that time. And then we roll into 2013, and Mr. Ashe is appointed to his current position. He's outlined in a very painstaking detail the fact that your current position carries a larger budget, more responsibility, a bit bigger workload. You've set that out for us. And it seems that 2012 and all of these issues weren't alluded to, referenced, considered or raised with Mr. Ashe. Mr. O'Fowley, could you tell me why that was the case?
The redeployment process was one that was established by the department in agreement with the union representing the chief executive officers, and it didn't deal with individuals' competence. It dealt with the individuals who were in the posts, and it redeployed them on the basis of seniority and preference. To my memory, there was no criterion relating to performance in that regard.
All right, so these matters didn't arrive. Can I just say, just to say, I don't know any other sector, any other circumstances in the real world where that would have happened. Anyway, you're in your job now since 2013. You've set out what you see as the dilemmas. I noticed that you didn't mention the fact, although the Cathaoirleach alluded to it, that there is now an investigation under Section 40 underway in respect of...
Yes, and I'm precluded from discussing that matter, Deputy.
Pardon me?
I'm precluded from discussing...
well, let's see about that. Let me put the questions and then we'll see how we get on. So, I understand that the Minister for Education established this inquiry, this investigation, on the 4th of October last. It was a Wednesday. Isn't that? Can the department confirm that for me? Wednesday, the 4th of October?
Yes, that's when the terms of reference were published.
Thank you.
After the decision was made by the Minister to establish a department, set out, they published full terms of reference.
Yeah, and to which I will come. Thank you very much. And of course, the investigation was instituted because the current Comptroller and Auditor General, Mr. McCarthy, who's with us here this afternoon, was dissatisfied and couldn't sign off on your accounts. So the investigation is launched by the Minister on the Wednesday, and then on the Friday you tell your board that you will be resigning sometime next year. Is that your... When will you be, or retiring I should say? When are you retiring, Mr. Ashe?
I gave 3 months' notice. I'm retiring at the end of December. I was 65 on the 9th of October.
Okay, so your decision to retire was not influenced in any way by the fact that the investigation is underway?
Not in the slightest.
That is purely coincidental?
Personal reasons.
Personal reasons?
Yes.
Okay, well I won't ask you to elaborate on those. The terms of reference for this investigation don't make very happy reading, Mr. Ashe. Can I ask you directly, the CNAG was unhappy with your accounts. There's a term for it, Mr. McCarthy. You had sight of the accounts. Sorry, I just want to make sure I get my terminology right. You got sight of the accounts. You couldn't give a clear audit. In fact, you couldn't complete the audit process. Am I right?
I would say the audit process is still ongoing. I haven't finished the work.
So you then communicated with Mr. Ashe or with his organisation, and you sought from them further information, isn't that right?
I raised what we refer to as a formal audit query, which is setting out findings of our audit work, and asked for clarifications, comments, and so on. Okay.
And what was the quality of the responses that you received?
I would prefer not to comment. I will form a view at the end of the process when all matters are before me, and I can't comment before that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Suffice to say that having raised issues and corresponded with yourselves, with you, Mr. Ashe, with your organisation, that matters weren't resolved and we're now into this investigation. So, one of the terms of reference is to examine and report on the robustness of the ETB's responses to the issues raised in the CNAG audit.
Deputy, can we get it up on the screen so everybody...
You can, of course.
Yeah, and what number...
It's term of reference, it's bullet point 1.
Bullet point 1. We'll try and get it up the screen.
And what's interesting here is that the investigation is to examine any lacunae, inconsistencies or insufficient clarity in the responses provided to the CNAG. That's an interesting first port of call for the investigation, to examine whether or not, Mr. Ashe, you were less than forthcoming in your responses to the Comptroller and Auditor General. By the way, who would have signed the letters and the responses to Mr. McCarthy?
Sorry, Deputy, I must respectfully decline to answer the question.
I'm only asking. I'm asking.
It relates to a matter
events
that is under investigation by the investigator appointed,
No.
and it relates to Section 40 of the Act.
Yes, I'm aware of Section 40.
We will fully cooperate with the investigator, and we are fully cooperating with
I would expect nothing less, and I also expect that you'll answer these questions which do not trespass on the substantive matters or any view that the investigator might arrive at. I am asking you, when you corresponded with Mr McCarthy, who signed the letters to him?
Sorry, Deputy, you're into matters relating to 2015 accounts. We're in here dealing with the 2013-14 accounts, and because of the Section 40, I am advised.
Sorry, who advised you that?
The investigator.
Well, you have been wrongly advised, and I want to know, when you corresponded with Mr McCarthy, who signed off on the letters? I want to know what signature was that. Mr McCarthy might clarify for me. What's the practice? So I might ask you, Ms McGeever, in correspondence with the Comptroller and Auditor General, who would sign off from your ETB?
Myself and the Chair.
Yourself and the Chair. So presumably that would be standard practice. So, Mr Ashe, I'm assuming then that the letters that went to the CNAG carried your signature and yourself, Mr Ruttle. Is that correct?
Certainly carried the
okay. So the first item on the agenda of the investigator,
Cut in, I'm not taking your time. Just one matter that was raised. Is Mr Thorne, I'll ask the Secretary General, is he an independent he's appointed by the department to conduct an independent investigation?
That's correct. Yeah.
So if he's an independent investigator, how would an independent investigator be advising a person whom he's investigated whom he should speak to? What's your view on an independent investigator communicating with people, telling them what he should or should not say if he's asked a question? I'm asking you about Mr Thorne, because I think we've received a letter from yourself today. I have that in front of me. You said in your letter to us here today, reference number 895, you said, given the investigation is underway, it will be important to ensure nothing is said at the committee hearing that would compromise the investigation. The investigator, Richard Thorne, has also requested the committee be advised of the need to avoid a discussion that would potentially do so. So have you a letter from Mr Thorne telling you that, to tell us this?
I don't have a letter from Dr. Thorne, but he was in contact with me. I was talking to him.
Who initiated the conversation?
He would have initiated it.
And who else did he indicate he was going to communicate? Because there's an independent investigation. Yeah. I thought he would be getting on with his job, and not tic-tacking with you, and not tic-tacking with you.
And he is getting on with the job, and as part of his investigation, he would have met with the department, he'd have met with the CNAG. You know, the investigation is well underway, and it's well on target to be completed.
And the Deputy will just allow me, as Chairman, just to pursue this. So the investigation is well underway, and he's having phone conversations. He spoke to you as well, Mr Ashe? Or was it a letter or a phone call?
A person.
Right, well I thought, given the seriousness everybody is attached to this statutory investigation, that it's underway with phone calls here and there by the person who's carrying out the investigation. You can see how I'm concerned already about this investigation if there's tic-tacking and phone calls and no records of phone calls and communications with people being investigated and people in the department already going on, and it's not in writing, there's no record. And then we're going to be presented with a report ultimately to allow the CNAG conclude his work, and we won't know who said what to whom during the course of this investigation. I'm very concerned now at this stage. Do you understand my concern? Do you understand my concern?
I understand your concern, Deputy, but Chair...
I'll finish the question. We're here every week, and there's the Charlton inquiry is going on. Secondly, there's an investigation into the Grace case, another issue that has come across this committee. And if we were here and Mr. Charlton was making phone calls to potential witnesses and potential people he's investigating, and there's no record of such a phone call, and he's telling people what to say and what not, I actually would be concerned about that modus operandi, given that you've made a very clear case that this is a statutory investigation, and this is, now we're beginning to find out, it's being conducted in this particular manner. Just respond to this now.
Chair,
do you share my concern?
I understand what you're saying. I am not concerned about the independence of the investigation. I believe it is being undertaken independently. He asked that nothing would happen that would compromise the investigation. Indeed, in your opening remarks for the session, you said the same thing, Chair. So there is not constant tic-tacking between the investigator and the department.
Okay, I want to ask the Comptroller and Auditor General, did Mr. Thorne phone you in this regard?
No, we've had no contact with Mr. Thorne in regard to
Sorry, no,
you understand my intervention?
Oh, of course, Mr. Ruttle, have you been similarly advised by Dr. Thorne?
I think, Deputy, it was outlined by perhaps in the morning that by Mr. O'Fowlu that Mr. Thorne had a meeting with the KWETB board yesterday regarding the matters involved. It was a very lengthy and
that's very interesting. And in the course of that, did he advise you, Mr. Ruttle, not to answer questions at this committee?
He certainly would advise us that it would be unhelpful to his investigation if matters were aired in a public manner, really? Or if certain intentions to do certain things were advanced, he could view it as an interference with his investigation. Now, the timescale on this, by the way, Deputy, is quite short. It's not months.
Thank you, Mr. I'm aware of the
time scale. It's about
I'm aware
20
of the
days or something.
Thank you.
So it'll be out there.
Carhirla, can I just say the following, because I hear and I share your concerns. Firstly, with the greatest of respect to Mr. O'Fowlu and the department, to yourself, Mr. Ashe, yourself, Mr. Ruttle, and Dr. Thorne, this is a committee of the Oireachtas. This isn't the local bingo club where you can come in and decide whether or, will you or won't you answer questions. You are in receipt of massive amounts of public money. And there are now matters of controversy arising from your stewardship and oversight and expenditure of those monies. And you come here to answer our questions. It's not an optional extra for you. It's part of the democratic accountability of our structures. And it is not for Dr. Thorne to advise anybody to come in here and not cooperate with our committee. I find that actually shocking and scandalous. Number two, as a committee, we're aware of the provenance of this inquiry. It's a Section 40 inquiry and so on. I don't accept, therefore, that a sub judice rule applies. I don't accept that anything that we do by way of carrying out our function can in any way skew an investigation that is truly independent and being carried out by an independent person. I don't think that's a farcical position. And number three, and it goes to your point, Cathaoirleach, I think the question now arises as to whether or not actually Dr. Thorne is a suitable person, whether or not this process now has been corrupted and polluted from the get-go, and I think we have to consider all of that.
You're posing a question, you're not making a conclusion there.
No, I'm posing a question. I'm saying that is a question that we need to arrive at. Another one of the terms of reference is around conflicts of interests. Can I ask you, Mr. Ashe, does your son, I understand, works in procurement? Is that correct? For the Kildare Wicklow ETB?
The man's relation isn't here now.
No, I'm just simply for asking him to establish the fact. Does your son work in that?
Deputy, you're referring to a matter that's under investigation under Section 40.
There's hardly an investigation as to whether or not your son works in procurement.
Deputy, the terms of reference you're reading from, I must respectfully decline to answer that question.
And Mr. Ashe, I respectfully decline to accept your stonewalling. Does your son work in a procurement function for the ETB, and when did he enter into that position? That's all I want to know.
Deputy, you're raising something from the terms of reference, and I most respectfully decline to answer. We are cooperating fully with the investigator.
Sorry, Mr. Ashe. Your primary responsibility is to cooperate with this committee. Do you not understand that?
I will cooperate with this committee when the Section 40
No.
is in relation to this matter.
You will cooperate with this committee today, and you will demonstrate the respect for the Oireachtas and for the people who are elected by the taxpayers, the same people who fund your operation, who pay your salary, and answer my question. It's a simple yes or no. Does your son work in procurement? I'm not casting an aspersion on him. I'm trying to establish yes or no. Is he working in that capacity?
He works as an administrative officer in the corporate services section.
Okay, since when, Mr. Ashe?
He has a multitude of tasks.
I'm sure he does. And since when is he in that position?
I can't honestly answer it. I just don't know.
Sometime since 2013 anyway, is it?
It is.
Prior to that?
14 I think. But the matter, he is not in a decision-making post.
Okay.
He has no decision-making responsibilities. His matter is, his function is functionality.
Do you... Okay. How do you manage conflicts of interest as a matter of interest as Chief Executive? What systems do you have in place to manage that?
There is an ethics document that all designated staff and all members of the board receive and complete.
And have you had occasion to declare a conflict of interest yourself?
I did a potential. I don't think I have a conflict of interest, but I did one in that there could be a perception that I could have a conflict of interest, and that does not relate to the period that you're referring to. My accounts for 2013-14 is what I'm here to address today, and if it's matters pertaining to Section 40, I have to advise again that I am constrained from answering questions.
Stop saying that, Mr. Ashe.
Sorry?
It serves no useful purpose for you to repeat that ad nauseum, bar to cause irritation on this side of the committee room, which I'm sure is not your aim.
I have received my advice. I do not.
From Dr.
I do not, and I respectfully decline. I am not in a position to answer today the questions that you're trying to pose to me. And with respect, I have the height of respect for you. I am not being disrespectful to this committee chair or to anybody associated. I have a situation where I have a Section 40. I have to comply with the terms of that Section 40. We are and we will fully comply with it. And I think the investigator that's appointed has to be given the chance, the opportunity to deal with the task in hand, and when his report issues, I assume it will appear in this committee, and it's then that I will answer whatever outcomes.
So you'll come to committee and answer?
I will, yes.
When you adjudicate that it's the right time to come?
When the report is published, and...
You'll be retired.
Sorry?
You'll have retired by then.
If you want me in, I'll come in.
From retirement?
Yes.
Well, just to repeat, it's just an astonishing thing that an independent investigator, and presumably Dr. Thorne would, advance the position of his independence, advises witnesses coming before an Oireachtas committee not to answer our questions.
Has he put that in writing?
The Secretary General of the Department to see what their advice. The Secretary General of the Department surely has some responsibility here and gives some advice. I never seen such hesitation in all my life from sitting here for the last hour.
Chairman, in a moment. Two just quick questions for two people here. Has Mr. Thorne put this in writing to anybody?
First of all, in my letter, I advised, and I also referred to Dr. Thorne advising. Yeah. He has not put that in writing. Okay. My office discussed it with the clerk of the committee.
I understand that.
And we put it in writing.
Yeah. Okay.
The difficulty in answering detailed questions is we are then, there's a risk that we may impact on the investigation which is underway. We asked for the investigation to be complete by Q1 of next year. The investigator has indicated to the ETB that he intends to get the draft report, which legally they need to have for 4 weeks, that he intends to get that before the end of December. So hopefully the investigative process can be complete early in 2018.
Okay, I want to ask the Comptroller just one question as well. In terms of reference, you might explain this. In the course of the audit by the Comptroller and Auditor General of Kildare and Wicklow ETB's financial statement 2015, which is ongoing, the CNAG brought a number of issues to the attention of the Department of Education and Skills. Just explain to me, you're carrying out an audit in relation to Kildare Wicklow ETB. Surely that's your point of communication. If you're not happy to communicate to them and issue your report as you see fit, like, is it normal when you're carrying out an audit of an organisation, and we haven't seen great examples of oversight from the department, that you would go to the department during the course of your audit that you say is ongoing and explain that mechanism to us, because this initiated the process of an audit. Why didn't you complete and call the audit as you saw it? Or whatever. You understand our question?
Yeah, I do. There were issues that arose. As I said, we issued a formal audit query. We did, in the first instance, contact the chair of KWETB about the matters and about the status of the audit. And it was subsequent to that we contacted the department. Now, there is the situation as well that in the legislation the department does have options in relation to, and specifically the issue of appointing an investigator.
No, that's not in dispute. The question is, you're conducting an audit of the Kildare Wicklow ETB, and you chose to go outside of that relationship to a third party, which is the department, in relation to an audit that was ongoing. That's my question to you. I know the department have their right, but my question to you is it normal when you're conducting an audit of an organisation, if there's a difficulty, you go to the some third party, be it a department?
It would be
did you go to Solus as well?
No, we didn't.
But Solus are a significant funder of the ETB. We've had this here this morning. Solus are a very... Solus actually in the previous year, or the current year for which information is available, they gave €26 million. They're a significant funder of the ETB. Why didn't you go to Solus as a funder if you went to the department who were a funder? I just want to understand how it got an issue. And I'll ask Mr. Ruttle then, because he said he wrote to you as chairman, and arising from his letter to the chairman, he went to the department.
I think specifically because the legislation, if you like, was brought forward by the department, and the department does have oversight functions, formal legal oversight functions. Those were the reasons that we felt, having approached first the chair of the board, that it was appropriate to go to the department as well. So both the department and the board would fall into the category of those who are charged with governance and oversight. And it is unusual to take these steps, but I felt it was appropriate in this situation.
Okay. And Mr. Ruttle, the Comptroller has indicated he wrote to yourself on this issue. Are you able to elaborate?
Yes, I did. And,
thank you.
And we met with the people involved, and we then liaised with the department for advice as well on that.
So the ETB contacted the department?
Yeah.
Right. Are we getting? I just want to get the sequence, because I indicated from your remark that you referred the matter to the department, but that was after already. And Mr. Fallu, or whoever was the person in the department, just give us the sequence of how this commenced.
Right. We were contacted by both the chair and the CNAG, and we met the CNAG's office, and we discussed with them the concerns that they had. We sought answers to the queries that they had, and actually added to the questions that that were being asked on top of the questions being asked by the Comptroller and Auditor General's Office. We met the CEO, we also met the Chair and the Deputy Chair. We sought answers in writing twice. We weren't satisfied with the answers that we received, and we initiated the investigation.
And just tell me, this number 3 of the terms of reference says the investigation may encompass matters prior to or before 2015, so it could have an impact on the statements that are here before us today, the 2013-14. So this investigation can look at 2000.
If something emerges in the investigation, we didn't want to preclude a look back on it.
And also, Chair, before we finalise the terms of reference, we'd have engaged with the Office of the Comptroller and Auditor General to see whether they had any comments or observations in relation to the draft terms of reference. So we'd have worked in tandem with that office.
Right. So there may be concerns in relation to the 2014 accounts which have been signed off already at this stage as a result of this investigation. You've provided for that in your terms of reference.
Provided that the investigator may decide to look there if the investigator finds a reason to look there.
Okay. And can I ask, can the investigator look back as far as 2012? And before 2004? In other words, can the investigation reach back into the Kildare VEC, or is it just...
The investigations into Kildare Wicklow ETB.
Not to the former VEC, no?
No, but there is flexibility in the terms of reference. If the investigator thinks there are other matters that should be brought to the Department's attention that don't come within the ambit of the terms of reference, he can highlight them in his report, and then that can then the Department can then make a judgment if there's follow-up action required.
So, Mr. Ashe, without delving into the substantive detail of the investigation, we now have it that the CNAG was, I want to choose my words carefully, not satisfied with the responses from yourselves. The Department of Education similarly was not satisfied, was concerned in terms of the responses from yourselves. Can I ask you, Mr. Ruttle, you weren't trying to mislead the CNAG or the Department of Education?
Mislead?
Or to frustrate?
Certainly not. It's never my intention to do anything like that, Deputy. In all my years in public life, I've never been charged with that at any level.
Nor am I charging it with you. I'm clarifying.
But it's a suggestion that I might
for
have
the person. No, it's a question.
I reject it in the strongest
it's a question.
Terms.
So you.
No.
So the fact that the CNAG and the department didn't get the information that they needed, or found themselves left with no option but to launch this investigation, was not certainly because you were in any way trying to frustrate or failing to provide the necessary information. That's what I'm trying to get at.
As I said, I have no intention, I never had any intention of frustrating any investigation or do anything like that whatsoever.
Okay, so you were...
Are you happy with the investigation proceeding?
Pardon?
Are you happy that it's now proceeding?
The way it's now proceeding, yes.
Okay. Sorry for
yes. We, as you know, we're awaiting a very imminent draft report, and it's not elongated. So, you know, I believe that.
Mr. Ruttle, you're a councillor, are you?
I am, yeah.
Okay. And where are you elected for?
Baltinglass electoral area.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Ashe, similarly, the CNAG and the department were not happy with the information that you were providing. What's your response to that?
I won't respond today, Deputy, with respect. That will be dealt with by the investigator fully, and I will fully cooperate with the investigator.
Okay, so you might fully...
I'm in a difficult position here today.
You're not.
In that I do not want to prejudice a statutory investigation.
Won't be prejudicing a thing,
well,
Mr. Ashe.
I expect what you're saying, Deputy.
I am asking you the question. In your correspondence with the CNAG and the department, they were dissatisfied with the information. Were you deliberately or
absolutely
trying
not.
to withhold information?
Absolutely not, Deputy.
Okay.
The responses were done to the best of our ability at the time in question. And under no circumstances would I entertain that thought. We operate to the highest possible standards of corporate governance. We are doing a very
Mr. Ashe?
Yes. Okay, sorry.
You clearly don't operate, or at least there is a question mark over whether you operate to any level of corporate governance. Just to remind you, there is an investigation underway.
That's why.
And if you don't mind, don't put such a statement on the public record whilst this investigation is underway.
Deputy,
yeah, so I think you need to withdraw
that. That is why, Deputy, I answered you the way I did, with respect, and I am constrained, and I will deal with the 2013-14 accounts. I will deal with any matters arising from it. We got an audit report, and that has been dealt with for the 2014 account, and they were signed off.
Okay, I'm going to call Deputy Cullinan next.
Margaret, I'm going to seek your guidance first of all, because I'm obviously not happy at all with how this has progressed. And I want to follow on from Dr. MacDonald's line of questions. First of all, we as a committee have addressed a number of different issues where there was parallel examinations and investigations. In fact, in a number of instances there was criminal investigations. If you take NAMA as an example, there was 3 criminal investigations, and yet we still did our work into a loan sale that was known as Project Eagle and produced a report. The KWETB gave the example of the HSE hearings where we discussed the Grace case, and there was a commission of investigation examining that. And we also had An Garda Síochána in here, and they were carrying out examinations themselves and investigations into what happened in Templemore while we were doing our work.
European Fraud Office was as well.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to understand here is how witnesses, and by the way the Secretary General of the department, which worries me even more, believe that they can stonewall this committee, refuse to answer questions, or put up a defence that we can't answer questions on issues because of some examination being done by, is it the department or the HEA, Mr. Ruffalo? Who commissioned Mr.
The department.
The department did. This is just a departmental examination or investigation. It has not been heard by a judge. You cannot claim it's sub judice. So I'm aghast that this has descended into what it has, and I'm seeking your guidance on this, because if this was to be the modus operandi for how this committee works in the future, we would never get anything done. And before that, I want to make a number of things clear. Mr. Ashe, do you know what your role is here today? Do you know what your role is in terms of reporting back to the Public Accounts Committee? What is it?
A witness here. Excuse me.
No, you're more than a witness. Do you know what you are here?
I'm the accounting officer, the accountable officer.
You're an accountable person.
Yes.
You're actually not an accountable officer. You're an accountable person, which means you account back to the Public Accounts Committee. Mm-hmm. And you are not accounting back to the Public Accounts Committee today. You are offering up as a defence a refusal to answer questions because Mr. Thorne, who was simply appointed by the department to carry out an examination, though he gave you advice. And that's not acceptable. It's absolutely not acceptable. So I need guidance from the chair as to how we proceed. Before I get that guidance, can I ask you, did Mr. Thorne advise you not to appear before the Public Accounts Committee?
No.
I'm talking to Mr. Ashe.
Oh, sorry. No.
Mr. Ruttle, did he advise you?
No.
Well, I have been informed that he did advise you not to appear before the Public Accounts Committee. So I'm going to ask you again. You were here as a witness, so I want you to be very clear that you don't mislead this committee, because if anyone misleads the Public Accounts Committee, that is not a good place for them to be in. So I'm going to ask you again, Mr. Ashe. Did Mr. Thorne advise you not to appear before the Public Accounts Committee? Did he offer that opinion at any time?
My recollection is that Mr. Thorne had concerns about us appearing here today.
Did he advise you not to appear before the public?
My recollection is he did not.
Was this yesterday's? When was this?
No, this was when he started his investigation. He advised us that he was in charge now of matters, and that we were not to discuss matters germane to the investigation Anywhere.
Is that in writing?
No.
It's all verbal.
Verbal.
Now, what I want to understand, Cahill, look, if you can help me on this.
Yeah.
Since when did Mr. Thorne assume the role of advising witnesses what they should say or not say to the Public Accounts Committee? Or since when did Mr. Thorne seek in his work to subvert, I would argue, the work of the Public Accounts Committee? And I want to put this now to Mr. O'Fallaugh, because I can tell you now, Mr. O'Fallaugh, that whatever report comes from Mr. Thorne is now absolutely prejudiced. It won't be worth the paper it's written on. You're going to have to go back to the drawing board. Can I ask you first of all how Mr. Thorne was picked to carry out the examination?
Well, first of all, could I say he is an independent investigator.
Yeah, that's your view. I'll give you my view. I asked you how he was appointed.
You said his report wouldn't be worth anything. It's an independent report.
Yeah, that's my
personal I just want to put in the record that's a personal observation.
Absolutely.
It's not a statutory investigation.
Yeah, it's not the view of the committee. It's a personal comment. But tell us about the procurement process for Mr. Thorne, how he came to do this. That deputy is.
We estimated the cost of the procurement process to be around.
We can't hear you.
I can't hear half what's going on.
We estimated the cost of the procurement process to be around 13,000. And we internally within the department we identified a number of persons who might approach in relation to seeking quotations. We contacted one other person who was unavailable to undertake the inquiry, and then we contacted Dr. Thorne, who at the time was undertaking an inquiry into UL, and that was near completion.
I apologise, I haven't actually got your name. Sorry, what's your own name?
Hubert Loftus.
Mr. Loftus, just talk me through then this process in terms of how Mr. Thorne was appointed. You said that there was a number of people that you evaluated, so how many people? We
contacted another person to see whether they'd be available to.
Does this go out for tender?
No, given the cost involved, it wouldn't be for a public tender, to be more for quotations.
And Mr. Thorne just finished a separate report for the HEA, or was it for the department?
That was a HEA.
Is he on a retainer with the HEA in the department?
No, I wouldn't. See that. Like we invited a proposal from him, and the terms of that proposal, based on the cost per day, were similar to what was operating on the UL inquiry.
Okay. And can I say to you, Mr. O'Fallaugh, nobody on this committee would in any way seek to tell Mr. Thorne what he should do, how he should carry out his examination, and how he should report back to you. That's entirely a matter for the department and whatever process you have with Mr. Thorne. How is it acceptable that Mr. Thorne would believe that he can in any way dictate to this committee how we can do our job or not, and advise witnesses to come before the Public Accounts Committee, including an accountable person, accountable back to the Public Accounts Committee, what they can or cannot say? How is that acceptable in your world as Secretary General of the Department?
He offered advice that he didn't wish to have the investigation compromised. He knew the investigation was being undertaken speedily. He is a man who I know, because he was here with you in recent months, respects the committee greatly, and who undertook a very fair and deep investigation.
Mr. O'Fallaugh, you're missing the point entirely, and with respect, you're avoiding the point I'm putting to you. What I'm saying to you is that we are not going to dictate to him how he carries out his review. You need to understand, as an accounting officer for the department, that we have a statutory responsibility as well to probe in terms of systems, process and procedural failures. That's our role. Regardless of whether there is parallel investigation or examination processes ongoing. That's our role, that's our function. So you need to understand here that what's happened is a person that you've appointed is attempting, and maybe not deliberately, maybe it's unintentional, but the consequence of his action is that he is subverting the work of the Public Accounts Committee. And Dr. MacDonald put questions to Mr. Ashe that he is now not answering, not because of any legal advice he got, but because Mr. Thorne told him in an oral conversation, I would imagine a phone conversation, that he should not. And he said the same to Mr. Ruttle. I can't understand that. I find it deeply troubling. And I want you to understand where we're coming from.
Mr. Ruttle, do you agree with? Have you?
No, I don't recollect any direction from Mr. Thorne on this at all. I would not be.
Just wanted to get that.
I would be an independent-minded person on things like that. I would turn up where I want to be turned up. If I'm asked to turn up, and that's it. But I've not received any direction from Mr. Thorne whatsoever. That's just to clarify. I could hear that.
So, Mr. Ruttle, maybe I'm wrong then. Are you telling me that you did not get advice from Mr. Thorne in terms of what you can or cannot say at this committee?
No, I didn't get advice from him at all.
So can you answer the questions first then? Maybe we should put the questions to you and not to Mr. Ashe.
Chairman, the inquiry is into the board, is not into...
So can we start the clock again, and maybe at this point we can now put the questions to Mr. Ruttle? Because from what you said, not only did you not get advice on what you can and cannot say, but you are of the view that you're independent, you can speak freely, so you can help this committee, notwithstanding the accountable person's view.
Well, you see, that's all right. I mean, I respectfully suggest that there is an investigation in progress.
So we have the same line.
No, this is a...
sorry, with respect.
No, there's an investigation in progress. It's a very, very short timeline, Deputy. I think Dr. Thorne deserves the time and the space to carry out his investigation, and certainly from my own point of view, I'm willing to be back here at any time that anyone wants me to be back here in the not-too-distant future to deal with that post the report.
Can I finish on saying this, Cathaoirleach? I'm deeply frustrated, deeply annoyed with the witnesses here and with the Secretary-General of the Department. And I want clarification from you at this point. And if we have to suspend the meeting and come back to this and bring the witnesses back again at some point, we will. If we have to stay here all night, we will. Right. We are not going to have witnesses before the Public Accounts Committee either subvert this committee, prevent us from doing our job. It's not going to happen. So there is no impediment whatsoever. No impediment whatsoever for the witnesses to answer the questions that are being put. None whatsoever. No legal impediment.
I'm suggesting we'll be going to private session as members. And I think
yes.
the legal advisor in your office. Will be here.
We have to get legal advice.
They're standing. They're here. So
I'm sorry, no. Yeah. I don't agree with that. Yeah. We have a job to do here in public session. We have two...
We're coming back to
just let me
session.
finish, Chair, please. Yeah. We have two ETBs here before us. We have a job to do in terms of value for money and asking questions. Let that process proceed. We cannot compel a witness to answer our questions. They're here in a voluntary capacity. Obviously, they're accountable to the public accounts. Let us deal with what we have in as fair a manner as we can. I don't agree we're going into private session. I don't think there's a need to go into private session at this point. We have to deal with what's emerging with us. And the questions should be put that we need to put. It's on the record if a chairperson or a CEO can't answer. That's what we're here to do now.
I don't accept our real voluntary capacity. We're here because they're spending taxpayers' money. It's not voluntary.
Sorry, the word is voluntary in the sense of they're here to help us. They're accountable, of course. Let me finish, please. In that capacity, they're not compelled to be here at this point. And we have to deal with what we're getting. And I think we should go ahead and deal with it. We're not in a court of law. We're here to bring as much accountability as we can. And there are two ETBs here who that should be asked questions by each of us in turn.
So the Deputy is proposing we continue to put the questions, and the answers we receive will be the answers we receive.
I don't agree with that, because I don't think that we can do our job, and I'm not happy with that. So I think we should go into private session and discuss this.
I'm going to ask the views of the members. Do we want to just a discussion amongst ourselves, just in private session, as to how we proceed for a few moments? What do members think? I'm only asking the members now. Briefly into private session.
I prefer we stay in public session. My preference is always for public session, but I do understand that we've hit a brick wall here, and we need to decide what we're going to do.
I'm with the previous speaker.
Bobby.
I think we need to probably at this stage get legal advice ourselves to know what we can actually do. We are after hitting the brick wall, and we seem to be going nowhere.
Okay.
So we need somewhere. We need to move this on.
As chairman, it's been suggested by a member that we get some legal advice. The legal advice is available to us now if we go into private session. We'll do that briefly. So what happens now is when we go into private session, we have to clear the room for ourselves to have our own private discussion, and I'll ask you to be on hand for the end of the private discussion.
To leave your stuff here.
Yeah, you can all leave your documents here.